The background setting of this book is an interstellar stage where a large amount of technology has been lost. Many extremely advanced technologies have been lost, and for many things, humans can only use the remaining machinery for production. They don't know the technical principles and simply can't make any improvements. Readers are earnestly requested to keep this prerequisite in mind. A lot of unnecessary disputes in this book stem from the fact that some readers skip through the text and ignore the repeatedly described concept of the Great Collapse, wrongly assuming that the interstellar world must be super advanced. The jolt of the spaceship docking with the port roused Li Bin from his nap. The subtle rocking of the spacecraft during its journey, coupled with the dim lighting of the sealed cabin and the stale, recycled air, had lulled his body into a state of relaxation, inducing a hypnotic effect comparable to the first math class on a summer afternoon. Li Bin blinked his eyes, gazing at the busy crew on the bridge, still a bit disoriented from sleep. The scene before him felt surreal. Just moments ago, he was dreaming of his math teacher lecturing on solid geometry in a thick dialect, catching glimpses of the silhouettes of girls on the playground out of the corner of his eye. In the blink of an eye, those vibrant images of youth were replaced by steel, machinery, buttons, switches, and a group of sweaty men. If not for this sudden dream of his school days, Li Bin would have nearly forgotten that he was a transmigrator, not a native of this world. It had been a full 16 years since he was struck by a large truck, described as a colloquial term referring to a specific truck configuration with 4 front wheels and 8 rear wheels, from prosperous and peaceful China and transported to this world. Not only had time changed, with humanity's technology advancing to interstellar connections, but space itself had also shifted. Earth was originally located in the Orion Arm, but now Li Bin found himself in the Perseus sector beneath the Perseus Arm, a distance far beyond mere thousands of miles. He had initially planned to save enough money to return to Earth and pay homage to the 21st century. However, he discovered that the star gates connecting various star sectors had mysteriously collapsed 200 years ago. Not just Li Bin, but the entire human population of Perseus had lost contact with the solar system. Having lost control of their home planet, the humans of the Perseus sector had experienced a severe decline and loss of technology over the past 200 years. They had fractured into countless factions, consumed by conflict and completely uninterested in restarting the star gates. The desire to return home and pay homage to his youth had vanished. "Purser, the Port Authority personnel are here," his subordinate reminded him. "Coming." Slapping his face, Li Bin rose from the corner where he had been slacking off. After more than a decade, he had come to terms with it. Since he couldn't return, he might as well live his life to the fullest. How many people dreamt of flying spaceships? He was doing it every day now. Although his position was somewhat tiring, the prospects for promotion were considerable. With a bright future ahead, perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. Li Bin, embodying the spirit of Sai Wang, referencing the Chinese idiom, meaning a blessing in disguise, quickly traversed the docking corridor. Amidst the hissing of the ventilation valves, he gathered his clerks and began working. Purser work was uncomplicated but troublesome, a task any ship's first or second mate could handle. The profession was highly replaceable. The reason Li Bin, a transmigrator, was able to become a purser was due to the document writing skills he had acquired in a course taught by a literature professor in his previous life, skills he used to handle standardized documents like customs declarations and registration. His promotion to the sole purser on the ship, and ultimately the fleet's only purser, was owed to the extraordinary memory he gained after his rebirth. Besides handling routine purser duties, he could quickly memorize and recall details from his mind, commodity prices, supply and demand across various planets, and even information on important figures. This allowed him to successfully establish a lucrative side venture for the fleet, smuggling. As for why, despite the presence of an AI on the ship, the captain specifically assigned him to this role, the reason was simple. Without Li Bin, the captain would be held accountable if anything went wrong. With Li Bin, any mishap could be blamed on the purser deceiving his superiors. Put simply, in addition to being the keeper of the illicit smuggling ledgers, Li Bin was essentially the designated scapegoat. It was several hours later, after Li Bin had finished flattering and cajoling the Port Authority officials, that he finally found the hotel where Captain Serato was staying. As soon as he stepped into the hotel lobby, the key personnel from various ships began whistling, clapping, and pounding on tables. Amidst the greetings, Li Bin ascended the stairs, giving a thumbs up to signal that the task was complete, met by a wave of enthusiastic cheers from behind. Inside the room, Captain Serato, bare-chested and leaning against the headboard, raised his glass in a gesture of contented indolence upon seeing Li Bin. The captain's companion handed Li Bin a glass of wine, then tactfully exited the room with a seductive sway. Li Bin handed the terminal containing all the documents to the captain for inspection, simultaneously reporting, "The company's goods have cleared customs, and the sales and finance teams are handling the process. As for our own cargo, the top sales team has been dispatched to contact the black market." Serato took a swig of his drink. "How long until the cargo is sold off?" "The fleet's ships need to move to another planet for repairs." Li Bin, knowing the captain was unconcerned with the company's business, replied smoothly, 3 hours at the quickest, 5 at the slowest." The captain looked surprised. That fast? Li Bin chuckled. Eldfell planet is covered in lava, a veritable death world. What we're smuggling is food. With over 1 million mouths to feed on Eldfell, we're guaranteed to get a high price. The 5-hour estimate is simply to allow the sales team to stall for competitive bids. Profit? At least 8,000 star credits. Cerato let out a breath of relief, straightened up, and clinked glasses with Li Bin, finally breaking into a smile. Minsheng Transport Company was a small player in the Perseus sector, a mere firefly amidst the vast darkness compared to megacorporations like Tachyon Technologies. Nevertheless, it boasted multiple space convoys built around cruiser flagships. Cerato, as the commander of one such fleet, had risen to the position of partner, yet his annual dividend amounted to just over 1,000 star credits. Li Bin's mention of 8,000 star credits significantly exceeded Cerato's yearly earnings. Furthermore, this sum belonged to all the crew members of the fleet. Ever since Li Bin became a purser's clerk, he noticed that crew salaries were pitifully low. This phenomenon wasn't confined to Minsheng Transport Company. In fact, all crew salaries throughout the Perseus sector were meager, despite being a coveted opportunity beyond the reach of many planet-bound individuals. Consequently, he spent considerable time researching and eventually presented a plan to Cerato. Given the difficulties in managing crew members during deep space voyages, coupled with the fact that crew members were allocated dormitories and storage spaces, Li Bin proposed the establishment of a secret society within the fleet, led by Commander Cerato, for the purpose of both managing crew members and generating revenue. All members' dormitories and storage spaces would be pooled, their excess funds borrowed, and goods would be purchased collectively for smuggling through the fleet's trade activities. In essence, it was about standardizing the crew members' spontaneous smuggling efforts and purchasing bulk commodities. This practice wasn't exactly novel. Similar activities existed during the Age of Sail. However, Li Bin's plan boasted one unparalleled advantage: his phenomenal memory. In the interstellar age, audits, surveillance, and informants had nearly eradicated such activities. However, Li Bin's memory allowed the ledgers and transaction records to exist solely in his mind. He could even recall the activities of each crew member. Without electronic records, and with the fleet perpetually distant from the company, the allure of successive rounds of profits was enough to draw all the crew members into complicity. When everyone profits, everyone becomes an accomplice. After numerous rounds of persuasion and experimentation, Cerato, initially skeptical, had become completely convinced. 8,000 star credits was the highest profit the fleet had ever made from smuggling. With the extra dividends, the crew members held unwavering loyalty to Cerato. Consequently, their enthusiasm for Li Bin, the human ledger who had always been fair and incorruptible, also soared. The fervent reception downstairs was simply an expression of their collective appreciation for yet another stream of income. After a few rounds of casual conversation, Cerato set down his glass and asked, "Li Bin, how long have you been aboard the ship?" "I signed the contract with Minsheng Transport Company in February, star calendar 198, Li Bin replied. "It's now March, star calendar 206, so it's been over 8 years. 8 years, how time flies. You were only 7+ years old 8 years ago, weren't you?" Cerato mused with a sigh. During the era of the human domain, before the collapse of the star gates, the natural growth rate of humans was far from sufficient to meet the demands of the colonies. Therefore, the human domain government established breeding factories and, through genetic modulation, altered the genes of all humans, greatly accelerating their childhood development and extending their lifespan. They were even able to provide customized genetic adjustments and educational services based on user needs. In just 8 years, a fertilized egg could grow to adult size and become a basic laborer. Regrettably, with the Great Collapse, almost all the technical data regarding genetic modulation in the Perseus sector was lost. Later generations could only perform limited adjustments through breeding factories, unable to make further advancements upon the original foundation. Although rumors circulated that megacorporations were attempting to restore human genetic technology, compared to the original grand craftsmanship, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that even if not completely overshadowed, it was like the glow of rotten grass against the brilliance of a bright moon. This was merely one facet of the age of decline. He believed he could climb higher in the fleet. Becoming an independent fleet commander in the future was not entirely impossible. Captain Cerato straightened up and asked, "Have you been home to visit in all these years?" "No." Li Bin chuckled. "Captain, this is the first time our fleet has docked at Eldfell since I joined. Even if I wanted to go back, I wouldn't have been able to." "Have you contacted your family? Do you miss them?" "Not yet," Li Bin admitted, shaking his head. "I don't really. We used to keep in touch, but then they stopped calling, and I couldn't be bothered with the exorbitant cost of interstellar communication." Truthfully, Li Bin did miss home, but the home he longed for was the one from his previous life, with the parents who had raised him with love and sacrifice. He felt little emotional connection to his parents in this life. Although he had parents, unlike those born in breeding factories, he was still birthed from an artificial womb and raised by AI. It was hard to say whether his parents' desire for children stemmed from genuine parental instincts or mere amusement. To make matters worse, they later replicated the process and produced a younger sister. His parents hadn't spent a single day raising her. Li Bin was solely responsible for her upbringing. The little one, in turn, showed no affection for her neglectful parents, recognizing only him, her older brother. "I feel quite bad for you, being away for so long without a single visit home," Serato said. Li Bin shook his head. "It's the company's designated route, nothing to feel bad about. Besides, the fleet is docked at the Eldfell space station this time. My family is on Eldfell planet. I plan to visit my sister." Hearing this, Captain Serato's expression grew complex. He sighed deeply and retrieved a small box from the bedside table, opening it to reveal a stack of letters. He rummaged through them for a moment and pulled one out. "This is yours." Li Bin set down his glass to take the letter. The moment it touched his hand, his heart sank. The envelope was made of genuine wood pulp paper, not synthetic imitation. Wood was a unique product originating from Earth. And since the Sun accounted for 99.86% of the solar system's mass, from a macroscopic, cosmic perspective, it was no exaggeration to say that wood, this product of earthly life, was rarer than gold, a substance requiring neutron star collisions to form. This wasn't a matter of technology, but a law of nature. Although humanity could transport plants for interstellar colonization, ever since the collapse of the Stargates, the Perseus sector had relied solely on its own limited wood production. Before the Great Collapse, humanity possessed terraforming technology and wasn't restricted to colonizing habitable planets. They established colonies on all sorts of worlds: lava planets, dead planets, ice planets, you name it. However, terraforming technology was controlled by the human domain, strictly prohibiting unauthorized use. Furthermore, as the last sector to be developed, the Perseus sector hadn't yet terraformed all its planets before the Stargates collapsed. With disrupted transportation and limited information exchange, this resulted in a scarcity of jungle planets within the sector. Most planets remained hostile environments. Moreover, the megacorporations that controlled the jungle planets deliberately restricted exports, limiting seed distribution, soaking them in deteriorating solutions, manipulating their value through hype, and employing scarcity tactics. They categorized wood into different grades, mimicking the artificial scarcity practices of the diamond market. In other words, wood was a luxury item, even if a minor luxury, still a luxury. A stack of wood pulp paper was worth a star credit. Therefore, this was certainly not the type of paper used for transfer or promotion documents. It was typically reserved for letters of appreciation to crew members in key positions. Captain Serato said with evident reluctance, "Your parents used your labor to pay off their factory debts. The contract was for 7 years. Technically, you should have been released to return home last year. I figured that instead of you buying a ticket home, it would be better to wait until the fleet's business trip to Eldfell to bring you back. Plus, having your help has made things much easier, so I managed to request an extension from the company." But the company only granted a 1-year extension, which has now expired. Inside is the company's contract termination notice and your salary for this year. The captain pushed aside the bedside table and, clad only in his shorts, sat on the edge of the bed, patting Li Bin's shoulder earnestly. "Go home and see your family. You were born naturally, unlike those of us from breeding factories. You have parents. Cherish them." Li Bin's mind buzzed. He couldn't recall what Captain Serato said afterward, merely responding numbly. Amidst the captain's reassurances, "The fleet will resupply in this system in 4 years. Go home and visit your family. I'll definitely come back for you in 4 years. Next time, we'll sign a long-term contract and make a fortune together." Li Bin left the captain's room in a daze, rejoining the boisterous celebration downstairs. When he woke up again, he found himself lying in the hotel bed, the room overflowing with his belongings. Li Bin rubbed his head as he sat up, painstakingly piecing together the events of the previous night through his hangover. He finally remembered that during the revelry, after getting drunk, he had told his colleagues about his impending departure. Everyone was already inebriated and had erupted into a boisterous commotion. Eventually, someone suggested helping Li Bin, the good-natured soul, by carrying all his belongings out of his quarters, saving him the trouble. And so, a group of staggering drunkards had spent the night, somehow managing to book a room, tearfully stuffing it to the brim. They had even carried down everything from his shared dormitory, including the toilet and the bed. Now, however, they were nowhere to be seen. After inquiring at the front desk, he learned that his drunken stupor had lasted a full day and a half. The Minsheng Company fleet had already departed, en route to another industrial planet within the star system. Since Li Bin's labor contract had been terminated, they hadn't bothered to administer a hangover cure. Not only did they leave behind the toilet they had dismantled from the ship, but they had also thoughtfully extended his hotel stay until the following week, allowing him time to tidy himself up before returning home so as not to embarrass them. Li Bin looked at the room crammed with his so-called belongings and couldn't help but chuckle wryly. He had just convinced himself that he had come to terms with the situation and was determined to make a name for himself at Minsheng, aiming to become a fleet commander. Now, he found himself unceremoniously dismissed with a termination notice. That Serato, waiting until after the business deal to deliver the termination notice, he was probably worried that Li Bin would abandon his principles and embezzle funds before leaving. Damn it, every single one of them underestimates the integrity of a successor to socialism.